Good morning, good evening. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this talk on the ray influences of the sun, the moon, and the planets they veil. This will be the first in a series of presentations focusing on planetary rayology. With this series, we expand beyond, well, Antonella already has, that was a wonderful presentation, the subject of the rays as rulers of the fivefold sheaths or energy systems of a human being, moving beyond that to the planetary source of these ray energies in our solar system. But as you'll discover, the two are linked. Planetary rayology also directly influences our planetary sheaths. So you could say one of the hidden purposes of this topic, which BL came up for this year's workshop, is to link the rays of the planets and how they affect our sheaths, those two principles, right? We focused for many years on the sheaths and how they're interrelated, but this year we're stepping into the planetary sources for these. Okay, unique to our second ray's sun is the obvious fact that it makes all manifested life in the solar system possible. Great golden devas convert solar prana in such a way that it can be used by our etheric bodies to sustain physical existence, while at the same time, the two higher aspects of the sun make possible all inner causal life. As chakras in the body logoic, the seven sacred planets collectively express one solar life, which is why it is said that all ray energies within the solar ring pass knot are subrays of the great solar second ray. And so it is that all sentient beings in this solar system are like fish in a vast solar sea, totally conditioned by the second ray. For the visible sun is also a cosmic son of God, and the second principle that he, it, she, it demonstrates permeates our solar system. Over the course of a solar life cycle, this energy inspires and even compels inclusive expansion until it reconciles all dualities, bringing about integration at every level. For a human being, this second ray's solar energy gradually heals the cleavages that separate the physical, etheric, astral, and mental sheaths, eventually resulting in personality integration, all due to the solar influence. In fact, it was during a Leo cycle, which is triply ruled by the sun, that the first great integration, that of individualization, which ushers an animal man into the fourth kingdom in nature, took place. Okay, let's talk about the second ray influences of the sun in astrology. Esoteric astrology teaches us that the sign in which the sun appears at one's birth indicates the energy which represents that personality's line of least resistance for a particular life cycle. But in addition, the sun, in combination with the energies of the sign in which it natally appears, represents the path by which we can most effectively achieve the next level of integration. That path is then implemented by the orthodox and esoteric rulers of that sun sign. But it is the appearance of the sun in a given sign that activates the integrative power of these rulers. The second ray integrating solar energy is implemented by and through the realm of solar angels. DK says, the sun, typifying the solar angel, remains constant both through the exoteric and the esoteric processes. And therefore, astrology recognizes it as a constant pressure and presence. This fact in itself indicates a significant truth. The soul remains eternally present in the past, in the present, and on into the future. A key component in our interface with the soul is our personality ray, which only comes to the fore when we have integrated the three lesser she's, indicated by these subplanes of the three realms of human endeavor here. DK tells us that, quote, the sun sign holds the secret of the personality ray and of the man's responsiveness or lack of responsiveness to the key, to the soul. So just how we might unveil the secret of the personality ray by means of the sun sign, well, DK doesn't tell us that. But the implication is that the combination of the integrating power of the sun and the particular potencies of the sun, of the sign the sun appears in at birth, indicate how the personality ray, whatever it might be, can best be brought into relation with the soul ray. Of course, the ascendant or rising sign is also determined by the sun. Thus, both sun and rising signs indicate the particular nature of the path of integration, really working together. DK tells us that one's sun sign represents the rajasic or activity aspect, and that the rising sign represents how one might achieve a sattvic or balanced and harmonious condition. He also describes the sun sign as the potency of the sun of probability. This is what is likely to unfold, right? And the rising sign as the sun of possibility. Together they represent the energy or activity, rajas, needed to achieve an integrated harmonious whole, sattva. Just what aspect of the fivefold energy system is being integrated is determined by where one is on the path of return. But in all cases, it is the solar second ray that substands the integrating process. So, personality soul integration is primarily brought about by the coordinated effect of the sun and rising signs. Quote, when the energies of these two influences are coherently blended and expressed, there comes a point of crisis wherein the soul and the personality are brought face to face. The angel of the presence distributing solar fire and holding focused electric fire, and the dweller on the threshold expressing and utilizing fire by fiction, comes to know each other with, quote unquote, intimate occult knowledge. We could talk about that for a while. Okay, the etheric heart center, the egoic lotus, and the monadic point of every human being is a direct microcosmic reflection of the physical sun, the heart of the sun, and the central spiritual sun, all ruled by the second ray. These three aspects of the sun pour through the three astrological crosses to our planet, conditioning our experience on all levels. As personalities, the waters of matter, represented by the second ray, Jupiter's exoteric rulership in Pisces, Jupiter's esoteric rulership in Aquarius, which represents the waters of life or soul level, and finally as monads, the elixir of pure spirit represented by Jupiter as hierarchical ruler of Virgo. So note, it's, of course, these are the three Jupiter rulerships and this particular quality of second ray fusion that it represents. Germane to this point is the fact that Jupiter also rules the monadic plane, which is the final for a human being, a synthetic goal, right? So it rules the monadic plane and the second creative hierarchy, right, which is called I love these names, divine builders, conferring soul, bright crested one, right? And it's very much connected with the heart center. Okay. DK says, second-ray influences and potencies are abidingly present and pour into our planetary sphere and life via the sun, veiling a hidden planet, and Jupiter. These sweep the forces of Leo, Sagittarius, Pisces, Aquarius, and Virgo into and through our entire planet and all its kingdoms of nature. Of course, these 5 signs are used because the rulers, Jupiter, these are the rulerships where Jupiter and the sun occur. Though the influence of the sun is all-pervasive, I hope you're getting that by now, it directly rules only one constellation, Leo. But in this sign, it has triple rulership. Thus, the potency of integration dominates all activities and growth in Leo through what DK calls the will to illumine, hence the sun rulership. This begins as a driving urge towards self-perception, eventually resulting in self-knowledge. It also manifests as the will to rule, but not just the dominance of other people. DK tells us that it is this will to rule which leads a person born in this sign eventually to achieve self-mastery and the control of the personality. As a result of this mastery, the Leo keywords shift from the lion of self-assertion, king of the jungle, to the light of the soul. So from I am, as a statement of entified reality, to I am that identification with soul. And excuse me just a minute. In Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 1, DK says, and I love this quote, see the soul as a radiant sun within you, the personality hiding behind its rays. You, the real spiritual man, produce the veiling of the lower man. That's a beautiful way of identifying with the soul aspect. So, and with this eloquent hint as to the purpose of veiling, let's take a look at the energies created when either the sun or moon veil a planet. But first, a quick definition. Veiling projects the specific subjective energies of the planets being veiled into and through the objective or form aspect when a planet is veiled by the moon, and into the consciousness aspect when a planet is veiled by the sun. The sun and moon are the most common veiling planets, though there are other examples such as Mercury veiling Vulcan. As just stated, the moon universally represents the form aspect, the sun, the consciousness aspect. Thus, we have statements like, all this time, the energy of the sun, veiling a sacred planet hitherto unknown, is steadily and persistently reaching the man via the solar angel. This statement suggests that the subjective energy of some sacred planet, an energy not normally available at the level of consciousness where this veiling is being affected, is conditioned and stepped down by the sun, thus allowing this unknown planetary influence to impact the consciousness aspect via the solar angel. So what is this hitherto unknown sacred planet? Both Neptune and Uranus, which the sun is known to veil, were quote unquote unknown before 1781, but DK often mentions these two, suggesting perhaps that there is yet another unrevealed sacred planet. In the Capricorn section of esoteric astrology, the Tibetan speaks of the sun veiling a, quote, hidden and deeply significant planet, which reveals divinity at the time of the third initiation. And a bit later in esoteric astrology, the Tibetan says, second-ray influences and potencies are abidingly present and pour into our planetary sphere and life via the sun, veiling a hidden planet, and Jupiter. This quote suggests a second-rate non-sacred planet. For the quote, sun veiling a planet is listed as one of 5 non-sacred planets. On this point, DK says, the sun and moon are listed among the non-sacred planets as they are, in this instance, blinds or veils, suggesting that their non-sacred status, you get little clues as to just what veiling means, but he never just gives you a description of the purpose of veiling all in one place. But here's an important clue, suggesting that their non-sacred status makes the veiling possible. Okay. In addition to these 1, 2, or more unknown planets veiled by the sun, we have the sun veiling Jupiter as the exoteric ruler of Leo, the sun veiling Neptune as the esoteric ruler of Leo, and the sun veiling Uranus as that sign's hierarchical ruler. Leo is on the fixed cross, but until the disciple has reversed his or her direction on the wheel of life, he or she comes under the rulership of the sun veiling Jupiter, which also exoterically rules in Pisces. But whereas Jupiter in Pisces serves to usher one into the world of form, the expansive quality of the sun veiling Jupiter, notice the dual second ray here, in Leo, serves to expand one's personality consciousness. Leo is all about development of consciousness. And at this first stage, it's about the development of personality consciousness. Once a disciple comes under the influence of the fixed cross, the energy, we're told, pours in from the heart of the sun through Neptune, thereby stimulating the heart, the throat, and the ajna centers, stimulating soul direction and fusion and infusion. Leo is the light of the soul, the second or Christ principle, and Neptune, with its second ray monad, is the planet most associated with the Christ. Here you see another connection with Pisces too, because Neptune is a special ruler in Pisces, and here you have, which I think is oriented towards the soul aspect as a kind of systemic Christ. And here you have the sun veiling Neptune as its esoteric ruler. When the Leo initiate gains planetary consciousness, he or she comes under the influence of the central spiritual sun working through Uranus. With both Neptune and Uranus, with both these planets, Neptune and Uranus, the veiling agency reverses. And it becomes the planets involved that act to veil the even more sacred, higher two aspects of the sun. This is a point that's not often noticed, that the physical sun veils sacred Jupiter, but in these two high aspects, you have this reversal and the planets become the veiling entities for these higher aspects of the sun. But in all three cases, the purpose is to condition and direct the planetary influences by the fusing, blending, integrating energy of the second ray. Okay, let's take a look at the moon, which is on the fourth ray, the primary ray of humanity. Unlike the sun, the moon has no emanative energy of its own. DK is emphatic on this point, saying the influence of the moon is purely symbolic in nature and in effect, and is simply the result of ancient thought and teaching descended to us from Lemurian times, and is not based upon any true radiation or influence. Today, the moon is nothing more than a dead form. It has no emanation and no radiation of any kind, and therefore has no effect of any kind. Pretty emphatic statement about the absolute lack of any direct emanating influence coming from the moon itself. Nonetheless, as a symbol wielding the force of this Lemurian thought form, the moon's position in one's chart can represent instinctual patterns that can delay the soul from being more effective. According to William Meader in a lecture on esoteric astrology, it can either dampen the soul aspect or inflame the sublunar qualities of the sign in which it appears. In the three instances where the moon is found as the ruler of a sign, it acts as the veiling agent of one of three planetary influences. One of the most important purposes of the moon as a veiling agency is revealed in this quote from esoteric astrology. I would here call your attention to the fact that in connection with the moon, as it is related here to one of the creative hierarchies, you have in the moon itself the exoteric influences of the ordinary mode of procedure upon the wheel of life. And in the planet which it veils and hides, in this case the planet Uranus, you have the esoteric energy which brings this hierarchy to subjective realization. There is a lot in this little paragraph. So let's take a closer look. First, in connection with the moon, as it is related here to one of the creative hierarchies. Okay, as hierarchical ruler of Aquarius, the moon rules the seventh creative hierarchy, known as the lesser builders. These are the blinded lives, the basket of nourishment, meaning all the cellular life comes from this, the atomic substance comes from this, quote, basket of nourishment, and whose energy is instinctual selfishness. This is different than, personality selfishness. This is inherent instinctual self-preservation type of selfishness. Next, you have the moon. You have in the moon itself the exoteric influences of the ordinary mode of procedure upon the wheel of life. Okay, this is an extraordinary statement because it suggests that it is our personality response to the elemental lives of the seventh hierarchy, which make up our dense physical forms, that is responsible for one's quote unquote ordinary mode of procedure upon the wheel of life. That is the clockwise direction that the personality takes around the zodiac before the soul initiates the great reversal of one's passage. Next, and in the planet which it veils and hides, in this case the planet Uranus, you have the esoteric energy which brings this hierarchy to subjective realization. Part of this subjective realization is reversal on the wheel of life. So we can surmise that in the three instances of lunar rulership, the moon promotes a non-reverse direction, and the planet being veiled, notice that they're all sacred planets, engenders the energy that leads to a reversal on the wheel of life. Esoteric astrology tells us that for a very long period, that these energies coexist. Actually, I'll be doing my presentation in esoteric astrology will be about this concept, this coexistence of the two wheels, that they actually, a wheel turning upon itself. In esoteric astrology, it means that you're subject to both the reversed and the non-reversed wheel at the same time. And this happens for a very, very long period of time. This dual influence is starkly illustrated by the fact that we have the first hierarchy ruled by the sun veiling Uranus, whereas the seventh hierarchy is ruled by the moon veiling Uranus. Uranus in both cases. Thus, in the juxtaposition of these two hierarchies, we have the primordial duality of spirit and matter, which in both cases, the seventh ray of Uranus interrelates, because that's one of the functions of the seventh ray, is interrelating spirit and form. So you can see the beauty and just the rulerships here, the sun veiling Uranus for the first hierarchy, the moon veiling Uranus for the seventh. Therefore, you have the penultimate purpose of the seventh ray and the sun as the final integrating agency, and the moon as the form aspect, veiling that lowest hierarchy. DK says, see, where am I here? Oh yeah, and then finally we have in this little paragraph, DK says, brings this lunar hierarchy into subjective realization. So from this, we might even go so far as to surmise that the relationship between these two hierarchies is what activates the forces of evolution in our solar system. DK also tells us that it is the fourth ray aspect of the moon in its role as a veiling agent that directs the ray energies of the planet the moon is veiling into the human or fourth creative hierarchy. Okay, did you get that? It's like the moon, the fourth ray aspect of the moon, the moon is non-emanative at its own level, but it is capable of directing the ray energies of the planet that it is veiling into the human or fourth creative hierarchy because of the fourth ray moon and the fourth creative hierarchy, which is also ruled by the fourth ray. Quote, the moon as hierarchical ruler of Aquarius, ray 4, the will to be and to know, plus the fusion of heart and mind, is the result of the work carried forward in the fourth creative hierarchy under the influence of that energy which produces harmony through conflict. So DK is talking about two energies here. The energy that initiates the will to be and know comes from seventh ray Uranus, whereas the energy which produces harmony through conflict is the inherent energy of the fourth creative hierarchy, which is magnetically linked to the seventh hierarchy by its fourth ray lunar rulership. So you have a deep connection between this 147 here, fourth, always in that mediating position, and which connects the highest and the lowest. Thus it is that the seventh and fourth ray energies working together that produce the fusion of heart and mind. Next up, we have one of the most important statements on veiling in the blue books. I would here remind you that the moon is usually regarded as veiling or hiding some planet. These planets are Vulcan, Neptune, or Uranus. These three create and influence certain aspects of the mother principle, which nourish and feed the life of the inner divine reality until the time comes when the Christ child is brought to birth. They determine or condition the physical, astral, and mental natures, thus creating the personality. They form a triangle of immense creative potency. So, this is another one of those paragraphs that you have to take apart in order to really understand what he's saying. So the moon steps down and makes available the energies of three sacred planets, Vulcan, Neptune, and Uranus, drawing their influence down into the sublunary realms of the physical, astral, and lower mental planes, thus making it possible for first-ray Vulcan to stimulate the etheric body. And we have a corroboration for this in esoteric healing, where we learned that the etheric vehicle from the circulatory angle is governed by the moon as it veils Vulcan. And next we have Neptune to stimulate the astral vehicle. Sixth ray Neptune rules the astral plane, but that plane's watery element is also associated with the moon. And finally, we have seventh ray Uranus to stimulate the mental sheath. Perhaps most importantly, these three form a moon-veiled triangle, which is an expression of the Divine Mother, of, quote, immense creative potency. So clearly, it is the fact that the moon is the veiling agency that makes this triangle a, quote, immensely creative expression of the Divine Mother. Certainly, the energies of this sacred triangle, veiled and stepped down by the moon, are germane to and active energies in both the healing of cleavages and the process of personality integration. So here you have a direct example of how the rays of the sacred planets stepped down by the moon are active in our fivefold energy system and in our integrating process. Okay, as the esoteric ruler of Virgo, the moon veils Vulcan. DK says the moon, or fourth ray energy, is here seen as an expression of first ray energy, manifesting through Vulcan. The moon rules the form, and it is the will of God to manifest through the medium of form. Okay, this particular pairing has an important meaning to disciples, for it represents the purpose of Virgo through the gestation of spirit in the form aspect. And as with the moon veiling Uranus and Aquarius, we have in this moon-Vulcan pairing, here Vulcan is represented by this point of light, an example of grounding the highest in the lowest, right? Remember the two hierarchies, the first and the seventh, and that is, you could say, epitomized by this moon-Vulcan pairing, right? Of simulating and purifying form with the spirit aspect. This 1-4 ray combination is a planetary expression of the will to be. For Vulcan, DK tells us, is the, quote, strength and potency which sets the world evolutionary process in motion. What greater symbol of the evolutionary process and gestation of the Christ principle within the womb of matter? To complete the moon veiling series, we have the moon veiling Neptune as the exoteric ruler of Cancer. This veiling emphasizes the protective aspect of veiling. DK says, the moon is substituted for Neptune because it is the form nature which is dominant in the longest stage of human unfoldment. Just as esoterically, it is the feeling, sensitive nature which dominates the average man, it is with this stable tendency that the disciple has to wrestle. In the mass mind, of which Cancer is the truest expression, it is fortunate that Neptune is veiled by the moon, and that the form fails to register or step down many of the impacts to which the true man is sensitive. Average humanity is not yet fully equipped to bear the full range of these impacts, to handle them constructively, or to transmute them and interpret them accurately. So, at each level, hierarchically, in Aquarius, esoterically in Virgo, and exoterically, and on each cross, cardinal cross, fixed and mutable, the moon draws the higher energies down into the form aspect, where they act as a seed until those veiled energies can be dealt with directly by the disciple when he or she has reached a higher level of consciousness. Okay, so how do the sun and moon and the planets they veil influence our five she's, or as MDR calls them, the five fields of the human energy system? First, we have to recognize that the personality and its sheaths are vibrationally en rapport with the fourth ray form aspect as it is channeled through the moon, and that these sheaths veil the true self just as the moon veils the higher energies of the sacred planets. Thus, in the four lower sheaths of a human being, there is a natural resonance with all lunar veiling. In contradistinction to this, the three instances of sun-veiled planets, all in Leo, impact the consciousness aspect. Form aspect for lunar veiling, consciousness aspect for solar. The first of these, fostering individualization. The second, soul consciousness. And the third, monadic consciousness. So to finish up, let's take a look at the effect of planetary rayology on a few ray sheath pairings. And this helps to connect what we were looking at yesterday with this presentation. The fact that Vulcan, when veiled by the moon, governs the circulation of prana through the etheric vehicle, very possibly accounts for the inherent strength and vitality of those with first-rate physical sheaths, demonstrating through a, quote, power upon the physical plane and an unremitting intensity of physical energy. Though more subtle in its effects, moon-veiled seventh-ray Uranus must certainly account for the fact that such types are, quote, very responsive to rhythmic cycles, as well as an ability to use the physical vehicle as an instrument in the magical process. That coming much later in the career of a human being. The effect of a moon-veiled Neptune on sixth-ray astral types is even more pronounced and widespread, for this pairing initiates mass incarnation in Cancer, rules human consciousness for eons, and is particularly influential among those who are emotionally polarized. Since moon-veiled Neptune conditions the astral plane, literally all the attributes listed here can be traced to this moon-veiling Neptune influence. The substantive aspect of the fourth ray mental sheath would be influenced by all three moon-veiled planets, but only the actual matter of the mental sheath. For at this level, the influence of the fourth ray of the moon gradually gives way to the mentally aligned fourth ray of Mercury. Though very rare among the general public, DK tells us that instances of a seventh ray mind occur with some frequency around the time of the first initiation. Since a moon-veiled Uranus conditions the lower mental plane, those with the seventh ray mind nearing this initiation would almost certainly come under this influence, demonstrating as an excellent memory, the production of crystal clear thought forms, and the quality of a magical mantric mind, utilizing affirmations and formulas. Okay, ultimately, see, how am I doing on time? It started at 40 minutes, getting close to it here. So ultimately, the personality ray determines the qualities and nature of the vehicle through which the soul will function in the three worlds. But before this occurs, the personality ray defines the nature of the separated self as a synthesis of its lower sheath. In this respect, the ray energies of the sun, moon, and the planets they veil directly affect 5 of the 7 personality ray types. But because integration of the personality is itself a soul function, the veiling influence becomes progressively lessened as the veiled planets themselves begin to exert their influence. So one really entrenched in the personality is still under the veiling influence, but as soul response comes, the sacred planets that the sun and moon veil gradually comes to the fore on their own, right? So first up, an unveiled Vulcan would be very influential in the forging of a strong and enduring instrument for soul expression through a Ray 1 personality. But as I mentioned yesterday during my presentation on the sheaths, this same strength, when influenced by a moon-veiled Vulcan, tends to intensify personality resistance to the soul. You see, so you can really see this journey from veiling to unveiling as the journey from personality orientation to soul orientation, right? So, an unveiled Vulcan, you have this powerful, potent, enduring instrument for soul expression, that will of God expression. But when it's veiled by the moon, you still have a lot of resistance that's brought through that first ray. Second ray aspect of the non-sacred sun veiling Ray 2 Jupiter in Leo would vitalize a Ray 2 personality and naturally align him or her to the second or soul principle. But as is true with all Leo sun types, the expansive, self-oriented, individuating energy of the sun veiling Jupiter makes personality decentralization difficult. The dense form orientation of the fourth ray moon and all the planets it veils would prove an obstacle for the fourth ray personality type, just as the astral orientation of the moon veiled Neptune would hinder the sixth ray personality type. So, in all of these cases, you can see that it's the veiling aspect that identifies with the personality, which is purposeful and useful for most of the career of a human being. So you don't, the veiling is a very beneficent process until it's no longer necessary. And then, through soul identification, the veils evaporate and you can identify with those sacred planets that are behind either the sun or moon veil. And I'll leave it at that. Let's see. I'll just say this last concept. Until the union with the soul takes place, Veiling makes available certain planetary energies that would otherwise be beyond the indwelling jiva's range of perception, energies that are indispensable aids to one on the path of becoming.